The line at the grocery store was crawling forward like it had all day to live, and Atlas Reyes was already running on fumes mentally, emotionally, and financially. "Dad, I'm hungry," came the small voice beside him. Atlas glanced down at his 5-year-old daughter, Sienna, whose cheeks were smudged with chocolate from the granola bar he'd let her eat before checkout. Her long, dark hair was falling into her eyes, and her pink hoodie had a hole in the sleeve. He shifted the gallon of milk in one arm, the loaf of bread under the other, and adjusted his grip on the peanut butter. That was all he could afford tonight. "I know, sweetheart, we'll be home soon, okay?" he said softly. That's when she appeared. He hadn't noticed her standing behind him until a soft voice said, "Excuse me, would you mind if I step ahead?" "I just have one thing." Atlas turned. The woman holding a small carton of almond milk looked like she'd walked in from another planet, long chestnut waves, a beige trench coat that probably cost more than his rent, and heels. In a grocery store, at night, in this part of town. "Of course," he said quickly, stepping aside. "Go ahead," she blinked, surprised. "Really, are you sure?" He gave her a tired smile. "You've only got one thing we've got, this mountain." Sienna giggled. "It's not a mountain, Daddy." The woman's eyes flicked to Sienna, and something changed in her face like she softened instantly. "Hi there," she said, crouching slightly to meet her. "What's your name?" "Sienna," she said proudly. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Zaria. Zaria Valen." Atlas didn't know it then, but that name would change everything. Zaria smiled at him again, and he noticed then that her lipstick was perfect, and her scent smelled expensive, not perfume store expensive. Private island expensive. "Thanks for letting me cut," she said as she stepped ahead and paid. The cashier scanned her almond milk. She tapped a black card, and that was that. Atlas didn't think he'd ever see her again. But as he finished paying, counting out crumpled bills and coins, he turned to find her standing just outside the automatic doors, watching them. "Hey," she said as he stepped through with Sienna in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. "Do you need a ride?" He blinked. "What? It's cold and you're carrying everything? I'm fine, we're just a few blocks away." "Still," she said, "let me drop you off." "My car's right there." He followed her gaze to the sleek black Mercedes parked at the curb. Sienna tugged on his hand. "Daddy, can we? My feet hurt." He looked down at his daughter, then back at the stranger with the almond milk and luxury car. "I can't let you do that," he said. "You don't even know us," Zaria smiled. "Then get in the car and tell me your story." The inside of her Mercedes smelled like leather and vanilla. Atlas sat stiffly in the passenger seat while Sienna made herself at home in the back, swinging her legs and humming to herself. "You a single dad?" Zaria asked as she drove through the quiet streets. "Yeah, how long?" 5 years, since she was born. Zaria looked over. "That's a lot." Atlas gave a small shrug. "You do what you have to. Her mom didn't want to stick around. I work, I take care of her." "That's the job." "What do you do?" "Construction, when there's work. Right now, not much." They pulled up to a small apartment building that had seen better decades. Atlas turned to her. "Thanks for the ride." Zaria looked at him, her eyes unreadable. "Do you have a phone?" He hesitated. "Yeah, give me your number," he blinked. "Why?" "Because I want to hear how your week goes." He laughed, unsure if she was serious. But she held out her phone with a blank contact screen open. He entered his number. "Atlas," she repeated after him. "That's a strong name." He gave a half smile. "Thanks. Good night, Atlas. Good night, Sienna." "Bye, Zaria," Sienna called from the backseat. The car pulled away and Atlas stood there, still holding the same 3 groceries, wondering what the hell just happened. 3 days passed. He didn't expect her to call, and she didn't until Friday. He was walking Sienna home from daycare when his phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello, Atlas, it's Zaria." His stomach did something strange. "Hey, busy tonight?" He looked down at his daughter. "I've got Sienna." "Good. Bring her where? You'll see." The restaurant was in Midtown. And it wasn't a restaurant, really it was a rooftop garden with heat lamps, twinkle lights, and waiters in tuxedos. Zaria was already there when they arrived. She stood as they entered, her coat draped over the back of her chair, her dress a deep sapphire blue. "You wore jeans," she teased with a smile. "You didn't say this place had a dress code." "I didn't say anything on purpose." He raised a brow. "You're dangerous. You're catching on." Sienna was already halfway into a velvet chair, swinging her legs under the table they ordered. Zaria asked Sienna about school, about her favorite cartoons, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. A firefighter, Sienna said. That's awesome, Zaria said. The world needs more brave girls. Atlas watched her, unsure what to make of this polished woman who asked about his daughter's dreams like they mattered. After dinner, Zaria stood and pulled something from her coat pocket. Here, she said, holding out a small box. Atlas frowned. What's this? A gift. I can't, you can. He opened it. Inside was a pair of brand new work boots, the expensive kind, the kind that would last him years. He looked up at her, speechless. Why would you do this? She shrugged. Because you let me cut in line. He stared at her. Zaria, this is too much. Her voice softened. It's not. You helped me that night more than you know. He swallowed hard. I don't get it. You don't have to, just... Let me do this. Sienna was already asleep in the chair, her head resting on the table. Zaria looked at him. Let me see you again. Atlas knew he should walk away. He was a broke, tired, single dad. She was, whatever this was, but something about her made his heart beat differently. He nodded slowly. I'd like that. Atlas wasn't sure what surprised him more, that Zaria kept calling or that he kept saying yes. She never asked for anything, never made him feel like he owed her. She just showed up. Sometimes with coffee, sometimes with a question about his day, and once with no warning a pair of ballet slippers for Sienna after Atlas had mentioned she liked to dance when no one was watching. By the second week, she knew where Sienna kept her crayons and that she hated drinking milk unless it had cinnamon. Zaria never asked to come inside, but when she did, she always left something behind. A story, a laugh, a warmth Atlas hadn't felt in years. One Tuesday afternoon, Zaria appeared outside Sienna's daycare in a navy wool coat and sunglasses big enough to hide half her face. You're early, Atlas said as she approached them. I had a meeting cancel downtown. Thought maybe I could walk you two home. Sienna ran to her and hugged her legs like she'd known her for years. Someone missed you, Atlas said, adjusting the straps on his backpack. Zaria met his eyes. So did I. They walked in silence for a few blocks, the city humming around them. Zaria carried Sienna's unicorn backpack like it was a designer purse, and Atlas tried not to stare at the way her heels clicked on the pavement. You never told me what you do, he said finally. She didn't pause. I run a company. He raised an eyebrow. What kind of company? I co-founded a tech firm. We design privacy software. It started small. And now, Zaria looked over at him, lips curving slightly. Now we have offices in 4 countries and a valuation somewhere north of 800 million. Atlas stopped walking. She turned back to face him. Are you joking? No, he stared at her. You're serious. I wasn't trying to hide it, Atlas. I just didn't want it to be the first thing you knew about me. Sienna tugged on his hand. Daddy, why'd we stop? He looked down at his daughter, then back at the woman beside him who had just casually dropped a life-altering truth. You're a millionaire. Zaria's voice was calm. Yes, he blinked. Multiple times over, she nodded. He started walking again, slower this time. That's not something most people lead with. It's not who I am, she said. Atlas exhaled. It's part of who you are. Zaria didn't argue. Back at the apartment, he hesitated at the steps. You want to come up? He asked, uncertain. Only if you mean it. He did. Inside, she sat on the couch while Sienna showed her a painting she'd made. Atlas watched from the kitchen, trying to reconcile the woman laughing with his daughter and the one worth more than he could imagine. Zaria looked over. You're quiet. I'm trying to figure you out. She leaned back. That's fair. Why me? He asked. You could be dating anyone, someone who wears cufflinks, who knows what a hedge fund is. I've done that, she said. None of them ever made me laugh in a grocery store. He crossed his arms. You're not worried I'll want something from you now, do you? No, then I'm not worried. Sienna came over and climbed into her lap without hesitation. Zaria didn't flinch. Atlas watched her brush a strand of hair from Sienna's face, her touch unpracticed but gentle. You're not what I expected, he said. She met his eyes. Neither are you. That night, after Zaria left, Atlas lay awake staring at the ceiling. He didn't know what this was becoming, only that it was already more than he'd planned for. The next morning, a knock came just after sunrise. He opened the door to find a man in a tailored suit holding a folder. Atlas Reyes. Yes, the man handed him the folder. Miss Valen instructed me to deliver this to you. She said you'd understand. Before he could respond, the man turned and walked away. Inside the folder was a letter. Handwritten, Atlas, I know how proud you are, and I know you probably hate this already, but I also know what it's like to need help and not ask for it. I found a way to get you steady work, no strings, no favors. A friend of mine owns a contracting firm. I told him about you. He looked into your certifications and wants to bring you on. Full-time, benefits. If you're angry, I'll understand, but I won't apologize for caring. Z behind the letter was a formal offer sheet. Atlas sat down hard in the chair near the window. Sienna wandered in, rubbing her eyes. Daddy. Who was at the door? He looked at her, then at the letter again. Someone who sees more in us than I ever thought we'd be allowed. He picked up the phone. Zaria, he said when she answered. You're making it really hard to keep pretending this isn't real. Her voice was soft. Then don't pretend. Atlas looked out the window, heart pounding. I'm scared. I am too, she said, but I'm still here. He closed his eyes. Then maybe we start from there. 3 weeks after Zaria handed him that folder, Atlas Reyes stepped onto the job site of a high-rise renovation downtown, his name already printed on the roster. The work was solid, the pay steady, and the crew didn't treat him like a charity case because they didn't know. Zaria had kept her word. No strings, no favors, just an open door he hadn't known existed until she'd pushed it gently ajar, but it wasn't just the work that had changed. Every Friday, Zaria picked up Sienna from daycare with a different surprise an afternoon at the botanical gardens, a visit to a planetarium, once even a children's cooking class. Atlas started joining them after work, not because she asked, but because every time he saw her with Sienna elbows deep in flour or helping her name constellations, something inside him shifted, like tectonic plates realigning. It wasn't just chemistry. It was foundation. On a quiet Sunday evening, Zaria invited them to her place. Atlas hesitated at the building's entrance. The tower stretched into the clouds, all glass and steel, the kind of place he used to walk past with his head down. Come on, Daddy, it's just an elevator, Sienna said, already tugging his hand. But it wasn't just an elevator. It was a private lift with a fingerprint scanner. When the doors opened, they stepped directly into Zaria's penthouse. The apartment unfolded like a dream floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the skyline, furniture in soft creams and deep blues, abstract art he didn't recognize but knew cost more than his yearly rent. It was silent, but not cold. Somehow it still felt like her. Sienna ran straight for the grand piano tucked near the window and began plunking keys. Zaria stood at the kitchen island, barefoot, opening a bottle of wine. I didn't know you played, Atlas said, watching his daughter. I don't, Sienna called back, grinning. Zaria poured 2 glasses and handed him one. I was going to order in, but I figured I'd cook. You cook, she arched an eyebrow. I'm not a hologram, Atlas, he leaned against the counter. I don't know what I expected. I guess this is the first time I've seen you in your own world. And it's beautiful and terrifying. Zaria set down her glass. You don't belong in fear, he stared at her. I don't fit here. You fit exactly where you are, she said quietly. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Dinner was pasta made from scratch. Zaria rolled the dough while Sienna dusted it with flour, both of them laughing as the noodles tangled. Atlas offered to help, but Zaria shook her head. You've cooked enough in your life. Let someone feed you for once. After dinner, Sienna curled up on the couch with a picture book, and Zaria stepped out onto the balcony. Atlas followed. The city stretched below them, glittering and indifferent. The sky above was cloudless, stars barely visible. Zaria leaned on the railing, her hair lifting in the breeze. I used to come out here after board meetings, she said, just to breathe. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. You don't seem like someone who doubts herself. I don't doubt myself, I doubt my choices. Often, Atlas studied her. So why me? Zaria didn't look away. Because you don't want anything from me, and that's rare. He exhaled slowly. You say that like it's a good thing. It is, she said. But it also means I have to work harder to prove I'm not just a woman with money. He turned to her. You're not, but I'm still trying to figure out where I fit in all this. Zaria stepped closer. You already do. You're in Sienna's laugh. You're in every time she grabs my hand without thinking. You're in the way she believes the world is safe when you're around. Atlas's throat tightened. I've never let anyone close, not since her mom left. I'm not her, Zaria said. And I'm not going anywhere. The wind picked up and he reached for her without thinking, brushing a piece of hair from her face. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Neither do I, she whispered. Their faces were inches apart. The city roared below them, but in that moment, it was silent. When their lips met, it wasn't fireworks, it was gravity. Quiet, undeniable, and complete. Like coming home to something he didn't know he'd lost. Inside, Sienna had fallen asleep on the couch, book still in her hands. Zaria carried her to the guest room as though she'd done it 100 times before. Atlas watched her tuck the blanket under Sienna's arms and turn on the nightlight shaped like a moon. Back in the hallway, he said, "She trusts you?" "I know," Zaria said softly. "Which means I have to get it right," he hesitated. "What happens now?" Zaria didn't flinch. "That depends on whether you're willing to let this be real." Atlas looked at the woman standing in front of him, confident, brilliant, complicated, and waiting. He didn't look away. "I am," he said. "But you should know I don't fall halfway." "I wouldn't want you to," she said, "because I don't love halfway either." He froze. "You love me," she didn't blink. "I do." Atlas had been through hurricanes, real ones, emotional ones, but nothing hit like those 3 words. He stepped closer until their foreheads touched. "I think I've been falling for you since almond milk in aisle 4, she laughed, soft and real. "Then let's not stop now." They stood there, 2 people from different worlds, making the impossible feel inevitable. The note on Atlas's kitchen table was written in Sienna's crooked handwriting. "Daddy, I'm with Zaria. We're at the big garden. Love you." He stared at it, still in his work boots, dust on his shirt, the smell of fresh concrete clinging to his skin. He hadn't realized how quickly his life had shifted, how naturally Zaria had become a part of their routine, how Sienna now assumed their time with her was just part of the day, like brushing teeth or bedtime stories. Like family. He turned the note over. On the back, Zaria's handwriting. "Come find us when you're ready." Atlas didn't bother changing. He locked the door, took the subway to the conservatory uptown, and followed the sound of Sienna's laughter into a warm corridor of glass and orchids. She was crouched beside a pond, pointing at koi fish while Zaria knelt beside her, her hair pulled back with a silk scarf he'd never seen before. When Sienna spotted him, she jumped up. "Daddy, look." "They have a fish that looks like it's wearing pajamas." Zaria stood slowly, her eyes meeting his across the water. There was something different in her expression, less guarded, more open. Like she'd made a decision and was waiting for him to catch up. He walked over to her. "She insisted on showing me the butterfly room," she said. "We got a little sidetracked." "I got your note," Atlas said. Zaria's gaze didn't waver. "I meant it." He looked at the garden around them. "You always take us to places like this, beautiful, quiet." "Why? Because it's the one thing money never gave me, peace. I never asked you about your family, they're alive, but they don't call unless there's a gala or a headline to manage." Her tone was even, but he caught the flicker of something deeper in her eyes. "I built everything on my own. And the higher I climbed, the more I realized I was surrounded by people who only saw what I could provide." Atlas nodded slowly. "That's not what Sienna sees." "No," she said, "and it's not what you see either. That's why this matters." Sienna had wandered off to a nearby bench and was sketching the koi on a scrap of paper. Atlas lowered his voice. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to tell me this was all a mistake." Zaria's voice was soft but firm. "I don't do mistakes. I make choices." "And what is this then?" She stepped closer. "This is the choice of a woman who's tired of being admired and finally wants to be loved." Atlas searched her face. "You really want this life with me, with Sienna?" "I want us," she said. "All of it, even when it's messy." "Especially then," he exhaled. "You know I've never had anything like this, not even close." "That's what makes it real." They stood there in the filtered sunlight, surrounded by orchids and the quiet rhythm of water. Then Sienna called out, "Can we get ice cream?" Zaria grinned toward her. "Only if your dad is okay with it." Atlas glanced down at his work boots, the scuffed soles, the dried cement on his jeans. Then back at the woman beside him, standing in the middle of a place she could buy but chose to share. "I think we've earned it." They left the conservatory hand in hand, Sienna skipping ahead. but as they reached the sidewalk, a sleek black car pulled up beside them. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Zaria hesitated. "I had something planned, if you're open to it." Atlas looked at her. Now she nodded. "I cleared the next 2 days for us." He glanced at Sienna. "Did you pack a bag?" Zaria smiled. "I may have gone through her drawers yesterday while you were at work, with her permission." Sienna beamed. "I picked the sparkly pajamas." Atlas raised a hand in surrender. "All right, but no helicopters." Zaria raised an eyebrow. "I said 2 days, not 2 hours." The car took them north past the city limits, through hills, until they arrived at a private estate nestled between a vineyard and a forest. The house was glass and stone, quiet and warm, with a wraparound porch and hammocks suspended between trees. That night, Sienna fell asleep in a guest room with a window view of the stars, her sketchbook on her chest. Atlas stood on the porch, watching the sky. Zaria joined him barefoot, holding 2 glasses of wine. "Will she be okay here?" "She's out cold," Zaria said. "That girl could sleep through a thunderstorm." He took the glass. "You thought of everything." Zaria leaned on the railing beside him. "I had time to think." He sipped his wine. "What about your board? What about them? They won't care that you're dating a construction foreman with a kid." "They'll care," she said. "But I stopped making decisions based on shareholders a long time ago. They don't get a vote in my happiness." "And you're happy?" She turned to face him. "I am. Are you?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at the house behind them, the room where his daughter was sleeping, the woman beside him who saw past his walls. Then he nodded. For the first time in a long time. Zaria reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. He blinked. "That better not be a ring." "Relax," she said, opening it. Inside was a key. "It's for the place we just left, the penthouse, in case you ever want to come and go as you like." He stared down at it. "That's not a small thing." "No," she said, "it's not, but neither is love. Or trust." He took the key, held it for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal pendant, Sienna's first hospital bracelet, engraved on the back with her name and birth date. "I keep this with me," he said, "every day. It reminds me of the moment I knew I had to be more than I was." Zaria looked at the bracelet, then at him. "I want you to have it," he said, her breath caught. "Atlas, it's not gold, it's not rare, but it's the most valuable thing I own." She took it carefully. "Then I'll guard it like it's priceless." He set his glass down. "Zaria?" "Yes." He stepped closer. "I love you." The words were quiet but absolute. Her eyes didn't leave his. "Then let's build everything from that." And when they kissed, it wasn't tentative. It was grounded, certain, and full of all the things they hadn't said but now didn't need to. Later, as they stood at the threshold of the house, Zaria whispered, "So what now?" Atlas reached for her hand. "Now," he said, "we make forever look easy." And behind them, in a house filled with light, laughter waited in the morning. The next few weeks passed like pages turning in a book neither of them wanted to end. The vineyard house became a quiet escape on weekends, a place where Sienna could chase butterflies barefoot while Atlas grilled dinner on the deck and Zaria read beside him, her legs tucked beneath her. The rhythm of their days shifted, not with dramatic declarations, but with a kind of quiet certainty this was no longer temporary. One crisp Saturday morning, Atlas woke to the scent of coffee and the low murmur of Sienna's voice reading aloud from a book. He stepped into the living room to find her curled against Zaria on the couch, both of them wrapped in the same oversized blanket. Zaria looked up when she saw him and smiled, not the kind that demanded attention, but the kind that made his chest ache in the best way. The kind that said, without words, "I'm home." Later that afternoon, as Sienna painted rocks in the garden with a bucket of glitter and serious focus, Zaria leaned against the porch railing, a file folder in her hand. "I've been meaning to show you this," she said, handing it to Atlas. He flipped through the pages, architectural drawings, permits, a plot of land not far from the city tucked between a quiet lake and a line of trees. "I bought it a few years ago," she said. "I didn't know what I was saving it for. Now I do." Atlas studied the sketch's clean lines, natural light, enough space for Sienna to grow up barefoot and wild, and a small studio tucked behind the main house. "You want to build this with you," she said. He looked up. "Zaria, this is. It's not a gift, it's a partnership. I want to build a home with you, not for you." His voice was quiet, It's hard to let myself believe this is real, she touched his arm. Then let's build something we can't doubt. They broke ground a month later. Atlas worked side by side with the crew, his hands in the foundation, his fingerprints in every room. Zaria handled permits and design meetings, often with Sienna perched on her lap drawing her own blueprints with crayons. One evening, while Atlas was laying the final tiles in what would soon be their kitchen, Zaria stood in the doorway holding a folded piece of paper. I got offered a seat on the global board of a major tech consortium, she said. He wiped his hands on his jeans. That's huge. It would mean flying to Zurich every other week, speaking engagements, media tours. It's what I thought I wanted 2 years ago. He waited. And now, I turned it down, she said. I want to be here with you, with her. I don't need a bigger spotlight. I have everything I want under this roof. Atlas crossed the room and pulled her close. You don't have to shrink to fit into this life. I'm not shrinking, she said. I'm choosing. The house was finished by spring. They moved in with little ceremony but full hearts. The first night they sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the lake, Sienna asleep upstairs, the world outside quiet. Zaria reached over and took Atlas's hand. You know, I never imagined my life like this. I thought success would make me feel full. And now, I never knew full until now. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. You gave us more than a home, you gave us a future. Zaria's voice was barely a whisper. So did you. The next morning, as sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows and Sienna danced barefoot on the hardwood floors in her pajamas, Atlas pulled Zaria aside. I need you to come outside. She followed him to the clearing behind the house, where a small arbor had been built between 2 trees. Beneath it stood a man in a simple gray suit and a woman holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Atlas turned to her. Marry me right here. Right now. Zaria's hand flew to her mouth. Are you serious? I already built the house. Now I want to build the rest of my life with you. She looked around the trees, the breeze, the place they created together and nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Yes, she said. Yes. 1,000 times. Sienna ran out moments later with a crown of daisies she'd made herself. I'm the flower girl, she announced. They married beneath the arbor with only the wind as choir and the lake as witness. Afterward, Zaria knelt in front of Sienna. You know what this means, right? Sienna nodded solemnly. You're stuck with us now. Zaria laughed through tears. Gladly. Years passed, but the rhythm remained slow mornings, loud dinners, quiet nights on the porch. Zaria kept her company thriving from a smaller office built beside the lake. Atlas opened his own construction business, his name now respected across the city. And Sienna grew up surrounded by love, her world built from stability and wild dreams. On their 5th anniversary, Zaria found a note tucked into her book. You once said you didn't know what you were saving that land for. I know now. You were saving it for me, for us. Thank you for choosing us every single day. She folded the note and placed it in the box where she kept their vows and Sienna's first drawing of the house. As she stepped outside into the golden evening, Atlas was already on the porch, waiting with 2 glasses of wine and the same look he'd given her that night on the rooftop garden, hopeful, certain, and entirely hers. They watched the sun sink behind the lake, fingers intertwined, hearts steady. Together was no longer a question. It was a promise, lived out in every sunrise, every shared glance, every whispered goodnight, and they kept that promise for all the days that followed.